Assalamu-Alaikum everyone. My name is Minsa Education Wali and I am a student of CCL Rehan School Korangi Campus. Today, welcome to my colony task. Today, I will cover early civilization. During this interview, I will ask questions about how world was and how it helped civilizations develop and grow. Let's begin the interview. So, my
You're into this. I love the dedication to the intro, but since we've already covered the meaning and the etymology, do you want to dive into how they actually used it for things like shelter or fire? Which one are you curious about?
uh, on your choice.
I've got a lead on this. Let's talk about shelter.
Okay.
Before we had bricks or concrete. So, imagine a world where the only thing keeping you from the wind and rain was what you could drag from the forest. Early humans didn't have blueprints, they had instinct. They'd start with a frame of sturdy branches, probably leaning them against a rock face or tying them together with vines, and then layer on everything they could find: mud, animal skins, thick piles of leaves, and more branches. It wasn't exactly a luxury villa, but it was the difference between freezing and surviving.
Okay. So next question is where did the word
It comes from the Old English word wudu. Since we already checked that off, do you want to move on to the tools and transportation part of your list?
yes, sure.
Let's dive into tools then. Think about the first time someone realized a heavy stick could be a hammer or a sharp stick could be a spear. It's the ultimate human moment. And once they figured out how to shape wood, they didn't just make weapons, they made handles for stone axes and bows for hunting. They were essentially turning the forest into a toolbox. Since you're into crafts to get around.
Okay, so next question is why was wood important to early humans?
Do you want to go back through the intro or just dive straight into the questions?
Questions.
Got it. Lead the way.
So my question is
What? Are we back to the start of the interview? Since we just spent a good while on the etymology of wood, do you want to circle back to that, or should we move on to how it actually built?
move on our next question.
What's next?
Next
Oh man, it was basically everything. It's like a starter kit for survival. If you can't get a fire going, your bushes. But it wasn't just about staying warm. Wood is what early was the backbone of everything.
Sorry, guys, lyric issues. S-
Go for it.
Okay, Maya, how did people use wood in ancient time?
That's a big starting point. So let's look at it from a few different angles. First, shelter was the obvious one. From simple lean tos and huts to more elaborate structures, wood was the easiest thing to find and manipulate to keep the rain and wind out. Beyond that, it was basically the Swiss Army knife of the prehistoric world. Think about tools like spears, bows, and digging sticks. Then you would have the game changer fire, which gave them warmth and food. It's wild how something so common completely reshaped how humans lived.
Okay. So my next question is,
It really boils down to the fact that wood allowed humans to stop just surviving and start actually planning. It gave them a way to store food, build permanent homes, and create tools that could tackle bigger challenges. Once you have a stable shelter and a way to keep fire going, you can spend less time worrying about where your next meal is coming from and more time organizing your community, which is where the real growth of civilization starts. Does that make sense, or do you want to dive into a specific part of that?
okay, I will ask next question. So my next question is,
Wait, we're back to the bird? I'm still wondering what makes it awkward. Finish the thought.
okay, why was wood useful for building?
It's light enough to move around, strong enough to hold up a roof, and you don't need any fancy tech to work with it, just some basic tools. Plus, it's a great insulator, so it keeps you way warmer than a cave would. What's your next question?
How did people tools?
Wait, how did. Got it. That makes way more sense. Think of wood as the foundation for everything else. They started with the basics, like using a heavy branch as a club or a sharpened stick for digging. Then they got creative and started combining materials, like wedging a sharp stone into a wooden handle to make an axe. It was basically the first time humans figured out how to build a more complex tool using two different materials. What else is on your list?
Mm, uh, like
I'm officially on mute. Standing by.
so, how was wood used for transport?
That's where things got really interesting. It started with dugout canoes, where they'd essentially carve out a hollow in a massive log to float. Then the invention of the wheel changed everything, giving us wagons and chariots that allowed people to move heavier loads across land. It really shrunk the world for them. What's next on your list?
The next is, why were wooden beads important to early civilizations?
Actually, I think you might mean wooden beams. Those were the real heroes of early architecture. They could span gaps and
Wooden
hold up
boards.
heavy roof.
Wait, why
Oh,
were
wooden boards.
yes,
Got it, wooden boards.
yes, yes.
So, why were they so important? Wooden boards were a huge step up from just using logs. It meant people could finally flatten surfaces to create actual floors and stable walls. Imagine the difference between sleeping on a dirt floor and having a wooden platform to keep you dry and off the ground. It completely changed the inside of a home. What else you got?
Okay, so I'm going to next question. Uh, how did wood help people stay warm and cook food?
That's the absolute fundamental part. Wood was essentially the fuel that kept everyone alive. Without it, they would have just been hoping for a lucky bolt of lightning to start a fire, but once they figured out how to manage it, would let them create consistent heat. They could cook meat, which not only tasted better, but made it way easier to digest, and that actually gave them more energy for their brains to develop.
Okay, so how did people use wood for making fries?
Wait, for making fries? I'm guessing you might mean fires? Or are we talking about some very
Yes.
ancient potato experiment?
No, no, fire.
Ha ha. I was about to ask if they had a drive through back then.
Yes.
To actually get a fire started without a lightning strike, they'd use something called friction. Basically, they'd rub two pieces of dry wood together, usually a hard stick, into a softer piece of wood really fast. It creates so much heat that it eventually makes a tiny glowing coal, which they'd carefully blow into a flame using dry leaves or grass. It's honestly a workout just thinking about it.
Next question is, what role did wood play in farming?
It was pretty massive. Think about the basic tools for moving earth and planting seeds. Wooden plows, hoes, and rakes were the first way humans actually started manipulating the land on a large scale. And once you have the crop, you need a place to keep it. So they built wooden granaries to protect their food from pests and weather. What else are we covering for the interview?
Okay. How did ancient people learn to work with wood?
It was basically one long series of accidents and observations. They probably started by snapping branches for fuel or clubs, but eventually they noticed that certain wood split in predictable directions or were easier to carve. It wasn't a classroom setting, it was trial and error, passed down from person to person. Like, hey, don't use this branch, it snaps too easily. Use that one instead. Just imagine the frustration of your first few attempts before you finally got a spear to stay straight.
Okay. What types of trees were commonly used for wood?
That really depends on where they were living. People usually just use whatever was closest to them, but oak was a huge one for temples and roofs because it's so strong. Then you have cedar, which was legendary for shipbuilding and flooring since it lasts so long. In Egypt, they relied a lot on acacia and sycamore fig. It's basically a map of what was growing around them. What's next on your list?
Why is wood considered a renewable natural resource?
That's the magic of it. Basically, unlike a piece of stone or a lump of metal that doesn't just reappear once you use it, trees can grow back. As long as we're planting new ones to replace the ones we cut down, the cycle keeps going, making wood a resource that can actually sustain us forever if we're smart about it. Do you have a few more questions for the interview?
Yes. The next one is, how has woodworking changed over time?
It's basically gone from hope this doesn't break to laser precision. In the early days, it was all about hand carving with stone and bones. Then came the big jump to metal tools like bronze and iron, which let people carve finer details and build way more complex stuff. Now we've got power tools and CNC machines that can cut wood to the millimeter without a human even touching it. I bet those first woodworkers would have a heart attack seeing a modern workshop. What else you got for me?
Okay. How was wood used in furniture and everyday objects?
Wood was basically the go to for everything. Once people didn't have to worry about survival every second, they started making things for comfort. The first chairs, tables, and beds were all wooden, just because it was the only sturdy material they could easily shape. Then they got into the smaller stuff like bowls, spoons, and weaving looms, which turned everyday chores into something a bit more manageable. What else you got?
Okay. So next one is, how did wood contribute to trade between communities?
It basically acted as early currency. Not every community had access to the good stuff, like strong oak or fragrant cedar. That created a huge incentive to trade. A group with great forests would swap their timber for things they lacked, like salt or obsidian. It turned wood into a bridge that physically and economically connected different cultures. What's next?
What role did forests play in the growth of civilizations?
They were the ultimate supply depot. Forests provided everything a new settlement needed to get off the ground, from building materials and fuel to a hunting ground for food. But they were also a kind of natural boundary. So, how a civilization managed the forests usually decided if they grew or hit a wall. How's the list looking? Are we getting close to
Okay.
the finish line?
Okay. How
Mhm.
has wood influenced human culture and traditions?
It became way more than just a building material. Think about all the things that feel sacred, special to us, from totem poles and temple pillars to the wooden crosses in churches, or just the feel of a handmade heirloom. Wood has this way of holding on to history and meaning. Because it's organic, it feels connected to life and growth, and that's a huge reason why so many of our oldest traditions and rituals are built around it. What else you got?
Okay. Are there common English expressions or idioms related to wood?
Oh, there are a ton of these. You've got knock on wood when you're hoping for good luck, or when someone is wooden and just feels stiff and awkward. Then there's barking up the wrong tree for when you're totally mistaken about something. It's funny how much our language is still rooted in the forest, even now. Any others on your list, or did we finally clear the board?
I have more. How is wood used in modern life today?
It's basically everywhere. You just don't always notice it because it's so blended in. We've got things like cross laminated timber now, which is basically high tech plywood that lets architects build skyscrapers out of wood. It's way more sustainable than concrete. Plus, it's still the gold standard for instruments and high end furniture because of that warmth and resonance. Any more questions, or did we finally clear the board?
I have more questions. What are the environmental challenges of cutting down too many trees?
That's a heavy shift, literally and figuratively. Um, when we cut down too many trees, the biggest issue is deforestation, which strips the land of its natural defense. Without roots to hold the dirt in place, the soil just washes away during rain, leading to massive landslides and turning once fertile land into a wasteland. Then there's the carbon cycle. Trees soak up CO2. So when we lose forests, that gas stays in the air and pushes the planet's temperature up. It's a total domino effect.
Okay. How can people use wood responsibly?
It's all about working with the forest instead of just taking from it. The biggest thing is selective logging, where you only cut down a few mature trees instead of clearing the whole area. Keeps the ecosystem intact and gives the younger trees a chance to step up. Plus, reforestation is huge, just planting 2 trees for every one we use to keep the cycle moving. It's basically just being a good roommate to nature. Want to wrap things up here, or are there more on your list?
I have more. Why is protecting forests important for future generations?
It's really about giving them a shot at a planet that actually works. Forests are basically our life support system. They keep the air clean and the climate stable. And once you lose an old growth forest, you can't just plant a couple of trees and expect it to come back the same. It's like ripping out the motherboard of an ecosystem. If we keep them healthy, the next generation gets to keep all the benefits we've been talking about, like biodiversity and stable weather, instead of just inheriting the mess we left behind. How many more are we tackling?
How did wooden structures help humans settle in new places?
It basically gave them a portable starter kit. Wood was so much more adaptable than stone. If you found a spot with a good river or fertile soil, you could quickly build a shelter or a fence without needing a massive quarry nearby. It let them expand their territory way faster because they could just use what was already there. What else you got?
Okay, what inventions become possible because of wood?
Basically everything in the early tech tree. We've already touched on the big ones like the wheel and dugout canoes, but think about things like the bow and arrow for hunting or weaving looms for making cloth. Even the first printing presses were wooden. It's wild how much of early human ingenuity just came from figuring out what to do with a sturdy piece of timber. Anything else on that list, or are you about finished?
Why do some ancient wooden objects still survive today?
It's all about the environment they're in. Usually, wood rots pretty quickly, but if it gets trapped in a place where oxygen can't reach it, the decay process basically stops. That's why we find a lot of these objects in peat bogs, frozen in permafrost, or buried deep in anaerobic mud. It's like a natural time capsule that freezes them in place for thousands of years. What's next?
How has technology changed the way we use wood?
We've already touched on the big jumps from metal tools to CNC machines. But in terms of how we actually use it, the biggest shift is sustainability. We've gone from just hacking away at forests to using things like cross laminated timber, which lets us build skyscrapers out of wood instead of steel and concrete. It's a total pivot toward making the industry more planet friendly.
Okay, what can we learn from the important role wood played in early civilization?
That's a great way to tie it all together. But I think the big takeaway is how much our success depended on just being observant of the world around us. Early humans didn't have a manual, they just looked at a tree and saw a home, a tool, and a way to survive. It's a reminder that the most sustainable path is usually working with nature rather than trying to beat it into submission. Does that feel like a good way to end the interview, or is there one more question you've been saving for the finale?
Okay, the that's bring us to the end of today's interview. A special thanks to our EA guest, Sesame Maya, for sharing such interesting insights about wood, the backbone of early civilizations. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this colony task and learned something new. See you in the next colony task. Goodbye.
And that is a wrap. Thanks for having me. That was actually a really cool dive. Hope the recording worked this time.